Welcome to another deep dive brought to you on behalf of his Blantz Lab. And today we are getting into something that honestly blew my mind.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It really is. Did you know there is this silent, hidden epidemic happening right now? Like, we are looking at a startling, massive generational shift in human biology.
Right, and it's happening completely under the radar for most people.
Exactly. According to this landmark 2007 study by Travison and his team, this was a study that tracked thousands of men over decades by the way testosterone levels have been systematically dropping across the board.
And, we aren't just talking about older individuals naturally aging here. That's the crazy part.
Right. A 30-year-old today often has the baseline testosterone levels of a 50-year-old from the 1980s.
The sheer scale of that data is what makes it so compelling because they controlled for factors like age, health, and weight, and found that the drop is an independent phenomenon. It's occurring across the entire population.
Which is wild.
But the real tragedy is how society has completely misunderstood what testosterone actually is. Most people hear the word and their mind immediately goes to bodybuilders.
Right. Aggression, huge muscles, purely external aesthetic traits, the stereotypical bro hormone.
Exactly. But diving into these sources, it becomes incredibly clear that it is really the hormone of effort.
Yeah, it's your fundamental life energy, your drive, your cognitive sharpness, your willingness to take on friction.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why testosterone is plummeting even in young, highly active men. We really need to explore why the normal lab results your doctor hands around you might actually be, well, a statistical illusion.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of the puzzle.
And we also want to look at how your body is actually just desperately trying to communicate with you about the environment you live in.
Right, and to understand that communication, we really have to look closely at the symptoms because, this decline doesn't happen overnight.
It's not a light switch. No, not at all. Low testosterone is an incredibly slow, subtle fade. You don't just wake up one Tuesday and realize your endocrine system has crashed.
So what does it actually feel like then?
Well, you start waking up exhausted even after a full night's sleep. You lack motivation for projects that used to fire you up. You struggle with concentration.
Yeah, just this pervasive apathy, or even a mild, constant irritability that just sort of settles over your days.
Exactly. And I can see how dangerous that subtlety is.
Because if the symptoms are that broad like tiredness, lack of focus, a little apathy, it's incredibly easy to write that off as just the modern human condition.
Right. I'm just busy.
Yeah, we all work hard. We all have mortgages and deadlines.
Yeah.
If I go to my doctor with those symptoms, couldn't it just be normal adult stress? I mean, it feels a bit like blaming the car's engine for being dead when really you just left the lights on all night.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is that people normalize this state. They completely convince themselves that they're just getting older or that work is just stressful.
Right, they accept feeling terrible as the default.
Exactly. But human biology does not operate in a binary state of perfectly healthy versus hospitalized. It operates on a vast spectrum. And this brings us to the inherent flaw in relying solely on standard laboratory tests.
Oh, let's break that down because a lot of listeners have probably experienced this exact scenario.
I'm sure they have.
You drag yourself to the clinic, you list off the fatigue and the brain fog, the doctor runs a blood panel, and a few days later they call you and say, good news, everything is in the normal range, you're fine.
But you feel anything but fine.
Right. So what is going on there?
Well, the illusion of the normal range is a massive issue in modern endocrinology. Those lab ranges are statistical aggregates.
Meaning they just look at the average of everyone taking the test.
Exactly. They take a vast swath of the population, many of whom are, quite frankly, already suffering from the exact same environmental suppressors we are talking about today, and they find the average.
So the normal is already suppressed.
Right. The tests are statistically designed to flag clinical pathology, to tell you if you have a literal disease. They are absolutely not designed to tell you if you are thriving.
Within range simply does not equal optimal.
Not at all. Being at the absolute bottom of a reference range basically means your body has enough hormone to keep your organs functioning, but not nearly enough to give you the drive and vitality to actually enjoy your life.
Wow. So relying solely on that printed sheet of paper is essentially asking a broken system to validate your health.
Precisely. You have to evaluate what I call the triad. 3 distinct layers that must be analyzed together.
Okay, what are they?
First, your symptoms, how you actually feel, your cognitive clarity, your physical energy. Second, your lifestyle, the specific environmental inputs and stressors you are subjecting your biology to.
Wow. Right.
And third, the actual lab results, used only as a single data point, not the entire story. Looking at just the numbers is trying to understand an entire movie by looking at a single blurry frame.
That makes so much sense. So if the numbers don't tell the whole story, we need to look under the hood at what is actively happening in the body. Like, why would the body willingly lower its own testosterone?
It's a great question.
From an evolutionary standpoint, suppressing the very hormone that gives you drive and physical strength seems completely counterproductive, right?
It seems counterproductive until you look at how the body prioritizes survival over everything else. We need to look at the HPA axis.
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
You got it. This is the body's central stress response system. Research by Cumming and others maps out the interaction between cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone, and testosterone.
And how do they interact?
Biologically, they act as opposing forces.
So it's like a financial crisis in the body.
Basically, yeah.
Think of testosterone as a luxury renovation project.
Yeah.
Building muscle, boosting energy, revving up your libido. If you are going bankrupt with chronic stress, your body is slamming the brakes on all luxury spending.
That is exactly what happens. It isn't going to invest in high energy or reproduction. It just wants to survive the day. It's biological triage.
Biological triage. Wow.
Let's look at the mechanics of that triage. When the body perceives chronic stress, it enters absolute survival mode. Biologically, the organism is not thinking about building lean tissue. It is preparing to flee a predator.
Right, fight or flight.
Exactly. Cortisol floods the system to keep you hyperalert and to mobilize glucose into your bloodstream for quick energy. As a direct consequence, the brain downregulates the signal to the testes to produce testosterone.
Because you cannot be in survival mode and building mode at the exact same time.
No, you can't. The biological resources, including the raw precursor molecules, are literally diverted away from hormone production just to manage that stress response.
And the ultimate driver of that survival state, the thing that keeps the cortisol alarm ringing constantly for most people, is sleep deprivation.
Oh, absolutely. Sleep is the foundational pillar of hormone production.
Because testosterone isn't just produced in a steady, even stream throughout the day, is it?
No, it's really not. It is primarily manufactured at night, specifically during the deep, slow-wave phases of sleep.
Okay.
During these deep sleep cycles, your brain sends a pulse of luteinizing hormone down to the Leydig cells in the testes, instructing them to synthesize testosterone. If you cut that sleep short, you cut the production window short.
This brings up that 2011 study by Leproult and Van Cauter, which perfectly illustrates this mechanism.
It's a terrifying study, honestly.
It is. They took healthy young men and restricted their sleep to just 5 hours a night for a single week. Now think about that. A lot of listeners are probably thinking, 5 hours, that's my normal schedule.
I hear that all the time, but the physiological results of that single week are sobering. In just 7 days of restricted sleep, those men saw their daytime testosterone levels drop by 10 to 15%.
Wait, 10 to 15% in 1 week?
In 1 week.
Which effectively mimics aging their endocrine systems by a decade or more, all for missing a few hours of sleep for a few consecutive days.
Yeah, it shows how incredibly sensitive the endocrine system is to our daily habits.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot build or even maintain testosterone while your body is fighting to survive a stressful, sleep-deprived environment.
The body will always prioritize the cortisol required to keep your tired eyes open over the testosterone required to make you feel vibrant.
Always. It's survival first. And so, if cortisol and sleep deprivation are actively diverting the body's resources, we have to look at what happens when we don't supply the right resources in the first place.
Right, moving from the invisible stressors to the actual physical inputs, the food and the internal environment.
Exactly. And we really have to talk about body fat here.
Yeah, because there is this massive misconception that getting in shape is just a math problem. Calories in, calories out.
Right. But the hormonal reality of adipose tissue body fat is wild. Harvard Medical School data points out that excess body fat isn't just inert storage.
It's not just a backpack of extra weight you carry around?
No, not at all. It literally acts as an active endocrine organ.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It is highly metabolically active. Visceral fat, the fat stored around your organs, contains high levels of an enzyme called aromatase.
Wait, aromatase, what does that actually do?
Well, what aromatase does is actively seek out and convert your circulating testosterone into estrogen.
Oh, wow. That creates a brutal feedback loop.
It really does.
As your testosterone drops from the stress and lack of sleep, you naturally lose muscle mass and gain more body fat. Then, that newly acquired body fat produces more aromatase, which converts even more of your remaining testosterone into estrogen.
Yeah, your own tissue is actively working against your hormonal balance. It is a vicious cycle. And it's further compounded by insulin resistance.
Like from eating too much sugar.
Exactly. A critical study by Pitalout and colleagues looked at this exact mechanism. When you consume excess refined carbohydrates and sugars, your body has to pump out massive amounts of insulin to clear the glucose from your blood. Over time, your cells become resistant to that insulin. This chronic hyperinsulinemia directly suppresses the Leydig cell's ability to secrete testosterone regardless of your chronological age.
That's fascinating.
Furthermore, high insulin lowers sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG, which throws your total hormone balance into chaos. The internal environment signals the brain that it is simply not a safe time to optimize reproductive hormones.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. I want to look at a paradox here.
Okay, what paradox?
Because if a guy hears all this, his first instinct is usually, okay, I need to get healthy immediately. I'm going to cut out all sugar, and I'm going to go on a super strict, ultra-low-fat diet to lose this extra weight.
Yes.
But based on the literature, that is a terrible move. I'm looking at the mechanism, and it comes down to cholesterol, doesn't it?
You've zeroed in on a major bombshell for people who have spent decades hearing that dietary fat is the enemy.
Right.
Long-term, very low-fat diets actually reduce testosterone levels. A study by Volek and his team proved this conclusively.
Because of the raw materials.
Exactly. The mechanism is entirely about raw materials, specifically the steroidogenic pathway. The fundamental building block of testosterone, the actual molecular precursor, is cholesterol.
Wait, so testosterone is literally made from cholesterol?
Yes. Your body quite literally manufactures steroid hormones out of dietary fats. If you completely strip healthy fats from your diet, no eggs, no avocados, no healthy oils, you are starving your endocrine system of the essential molecules it needs to synthesize testosterone.
So the very diet someone might adopt to get healthy is secretly sabotaging their hormonal drive by cutting off the supply chain.
Precisely.
But it isn't just what we are restricting, it's what we are accidentally ingesting. We need to explore endocrine disruptors.
Oh, this is a big one.
An Endocrine Society report highlighted how everyday chemicals, particularly BPA found in plastics, wreak havoc on our systems.
The mechanism of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs, is insidious. They basically act as molecular mimics in the body.
It's like a parking lot, right? Your body's cells are the parking spaces, specifically the androgen receptors.
I like that analogy.
Testosterone is the car that holds the keys to start the engine, trying to pull into that space to deliver its signal. But BPA, phthalates, and other microplastics drive into those spots and park there first.
Exactly. The testosterone has nowhere to go, so it can't deliver its message.
The body's entire communication network gets jammed, and eventually the brain just stops sending the cars altogether, leading to downregulated production.
That is the perfect visualization of receptor binding. And since we are surrounded by plastics, water bottles, food packaging, thermal receipts, it is a constant daily barrage on those receptors.
Just constant interference.
Yeah. And we also have to factor in alcohol. Research by Rakhdawi and Sarkar shows that chronic alcohol consumption does immense lasting damage.
It isn't just a temporary dip while you have a hangover.
No, it's way worse than that.
Yeah.
Alcohol directly poisons the Leydig cells in the testes, causing oxidative stress that degrades their ability to produce testosterone entirely. On top of that, it severely disrupts the REM and deep sleep cycles we discussed earlier. It is a systemic silencer on multiple fronts.
So we've covered the environmental saboteurs, the diet, the plastics, the alcohol. But we also have to look at what you do with your body, because physical output heavily dictates hormonal input.
Let's look at the movement paradox.
Okay, yeah. The body operates on a strict basis of supply and demand. It only produces testosterone if it has a compelling biological reason to do so.
And according to research by Kramer and others, strength training provides that undeniable reason.
Right, but it's not just any movement.
Yeah, going for a light jog or a casual bike ride doesn't send the same signal as lifting heavy weights, does it?
Not at all. When you target large muscle groups like doing squats or deadlifts, you are creating massive mechanical tension.
And that physical stress sends a systemic signal to the brain saying, we are under a heavy load, we need to adapt, we need more muscle tissue, send the testosterone.
Exactly. It's a process called mechanotransduction. The muscle isn't just an aesthetic result, It is the demand signal itself. So if you don't use it, you lose it.
Essentially, if your body doesn't experience the biological need to maintain or build muscle mass through resistance, it simply will not waste the metabolic resources producing the hormone. It lets the system downregulate to conserve energy.
Okay, so the logical conclusion a lot of guys jump to is, if lifting weights equals more testosterone, I should just live in the weight room 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. Grind it out. More is more.
And that leads straight into the overtraining trap.
Uh,
A fascinating 2006 study by Hackney looked into the hormonal profiles of overtrained individuals. If you train excessively without adequate recovery, the mechanism flips entirely.
What happens?
Your body stops seeing the exercise as a signal to build and starts interpreting it as a profound physical trauma.
Oh, we are right back to the survival mode triage.
You've connected the dots. The central nervous system gets fatigued. Cortisol spikes to manage the constant unhealed tissue damage. The body enters a state of high alert, and testosterone plummets.
So, smarter training paired with radical recovery builds hormones. Relentless, unrecovered training destroys them.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the most fundamental yet completely ignored recovery tool we have: natural sunlight.
Yes. A study by Pills and his team demonstrated that vitamin D is crucial for testosterone production. Men with optimized vitamin D levels naturally have higher testosterone.
And vitamin D is fundamentally synthesized in the skin via UVB exposure from the sun, right?
It is, but the sun's role goes far beyond just vitamin synthesis.
It's the circadian rhythm. The mechanism here is honestly fascinating to me.
Walk us through it.
So, when you get morning sunlight in your eyes, the photons hit the photoreceptors in your retina, which send a signal straight to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain.
The body's master clock.
Exactly. That sets your biological clock. It triggers a healthy, natural spike of cortisol in the morning to wake you up, which starts a timer. 14 hours later, that timer allows melatonin to release, which allows your body to drop into that deep, slow-wave sleep we talked about.
Which is when the luteinizing hormone pulses and tells your body to make testosterone.
Right. The sun isn't just there for a mood boost. It is a literal mechanical gear in your hormone production cycle.
It really is. And when you look at all of these mechanisms together, the sleep restriction interrupting the nocturnal production window, the chronic psychological stress keeping cortisol elevated, the processed foods inducing insulin resistance.
The plastic mimics blocking the receptors.
Exactly. Plus the lack of heavy mechanical tension, the complete disconnection from the circadian rhythm. You start to see a very clear mechanical picture of why levels are dropping globally.
So, what does this all mean? It means that testosterone isn't some magical substance that you just add to your body with a quick fix supplement or some internet hack.
No, not at all.
It is an indicator, a dashboard light. It is a reflection of your overall physiological environment. It naturally grows when you start blocking the pathways.
That is the core truth of this entire deep dive. A critical study by Harmon and colleagues looked at age-related testosterone decline. While hormone production does naturally shift as we age, the massive systematic plummets we are seeing are heavily dictated by environment and lifestyle, not just the calendar on the wall.
We have control over this.
We have so much control. The mechanisms of decline are largely within our hands. There are 50-year-old men today walking around with the hormonal profiles of healthy 30-year-olds because they have optimized their environment and honored their biology.
Because the body is constantly communicating with you. When you feel that apathy, that drain in energy, that loss of drive, it isn't a random malfunction.
Right.
It is your biology accurately assessing your environment and saying the conditions we are in right now are not safe for thriving. I am shutting down the non-essentials.
Which leads me to this final thought for you to take away. If our modern world, with its relentless artificial urgency, its blue light at midnight, its highly processed diets, and its invisible plastic wrapping is perfectly designed to suppress our most vital biological drives.
Yeah.
What other silent physiological signals are we masking with caffeine, quick-fix pills, and endless scrolling instead of actually listening to what our bodies are begging us to change?
Wow. That is a profound question to leave us with. Stop looking for the quick fix and start looking at the foundation. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. On behalf of his Blance Lab, I want to officially sign off and say goodbye. We are always looking to explore the topics that matter most to you, so please leave your comments, send in your suggestions, and let us know what you want us to unpack next. Until the next deep dive, take care of yourselves and listen to your body.